The familiar squeak of the mop against black and white marble echoed through the grand lobby of the Vermilion Hotel. For Garrett Holden, that sound had become the rhythm of a life deliberately chosen for its silence, its invisibility. Each stroke was a meditation, a deliberate push against memories of another existence filled with the screams of wounded soldiers and the frantic pulse of operating rooms in combat zones. Here, there was only the scent of lemon polish, the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, and the quiet dignity of being unseen. At 52, Garrett still carried himself with the disciplined posture of his military days. His shoulders remained square, his movements economical and precise. But his gray-green eyes held the kind of weariness that came not from age, but from carrying secrets too heavy for ordinary conversation. 7 years had passed since Dr. Garrett Calloway testified against Meridian Medical, the corrupt supplier that had knowingly sold defective surgical equipment to combat hospitals. 37 soldiers had died on their operating tables because of faulty instruments. Garrett had been the whistleblower who chose truth over career. The reward for his courage had been destruction. His medical license suspended, his reputation shredded. His wife, unable to handle the pressure, had left him with divorce papers and a daughter barely old enough to understand why daddy's hands now held mops instead of scalpels. Witness protection had given him a new name, a new city, a new life scrubbing floors in Pennsylvania, while the real criminals served minimal sentences. But Garrett had Rosie, and Rosie made everything bearable. The morning shift was usually quiet, but today the lobby hummed with unusual energy. The Ashford Maritime Global Conference had taken over the entire East Wing, bringing executives in designer suits and security personnel with earpieces and suspicious eyes. Garrett worked his way toward the East Elevator Bank, where a maintenance worker struggled with doors that kept trying to close despite his attempts to hold them open. The safety sensors should have prevented this malfunction. His trained eye caught the subtle vibration in the cable housing, the faint grinding sound that spoke of metal under stress. He was already moving when he heard it, a woman's scream from inside the car, followed by the terrified wail of a child. The next 30 seconds happened in focused clarity. His body remembered what his conscious mind had tried to forget. He wedged his heavy-duty cleaning tool between the closing panels, forcing them apart. Inside, a young mother clutched her son as the elevator cab hung at a dangerous angle. A severed cable swung above them like a steel serpent. Garrett's voice came out steady and commanding, the voice of a man who had talked frightened medics through emergency surgeries while mortar rounds exploded nearby. He guided them out with precise instructions, manipulating the emergency override with muscle memory. The mother and child crossed the threshold just as the elevator lurched and dropped another 6 inches. The hotel manager rushed over, face pale with shock. Garrett calmly explained the mechanical failures, the overdue inspections, the specific components needing replacement. The manager stared with confusion. How would a janitor know such technical details? Garrett shrugged, already backing away. He had worked maintenance in Pittsburgh for a while. Steel mills have elevators too. The lie came easily. It always did now. That evening in their small apartment in the shadow of the abandoned Hawthorne Steelworks, Garrett sat at the kitchen table with his daughter. Between them lay the delicate innards of an antique pocket watch, brass gears and tiny springs arranged with surgical precision. Rosalind Holden, whom everyone called Rosie, was 7 years old with her father's watchful eyes. She had inherited his steady hands and his gift for seeing how broken things could be made whole. Garrett pointed to a coiled spring. This is the...
Look at me. Breathe slowly. Follow me, one step at a time.
Okay, I'll follow you.
mainspring, sweetheart. The heart of the watch. When wound too tight, it snaps. Too loose and the watch runs slow. Rosie's small face scrunched in concentration. Then her eyes brightened. Like people, right, Daddy? You always say people break when they are wound too tight. Garrett felt his throat tighten. That is exactly right. Everything needs the right amount of tension. At school today, Rosie said, we learned about heroes. I told everyone my daddy is a hero. Garrett's hands stilled. What did you tell them? That you fix things nobody else can see are broken. The simple truth made his eyes sting. He blinked rapidly, focusing on threading a tiny screw. Not all heroes wear capes, right, Daddy? Right, baby girl. Some just carry toolboxes or mops. The world was not built by men in fancy suits, Rosie. He repeated words his father had taught him decades ago. It was built by people who know how to use wrenches. The next morning brought chaos to the Vermilion Hotel. Garrett was restocking supply closets when he heard voices speaking rapid Dutch near the grand staircase. The language caught his attention immediately. His mother had been Dutch, raised in Amsterdam before emigrating, and she had taught him her native tongue alongside English. He recognized Evangeline Ashford before seeing her. At 48, she was CEO of Ashford Maritime Global, one of the largest shipping companies in the world. Tall, with steel gray hair pulled into an elegant chignon, she moved through the lobby like a ship cutting through calm waters. But Garrett noticed what others might miss: the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes swept the room with assessment rather than casual observation, the almost imperceptible tremor in her left hand. Her situation activated instincts he had tried to bury, the ones that had kept him alive in places where danger announced itself not with gunfire, but with subtle shifts in conversation. The revolving doors hissed open. Sterling Ashford walked like a man who owned not just this hotel, but the ground beneath it. At 44, Evangeline's younger brother was handsome in a cold, calculated way, his features sharp enough to cut glass, his smile never reaching his eyes. He spoke to his sister in English, deliberately loud. "The board members are arriving early. Thompson wants to discuss the Rotterdam terminal." Evangeline's shoulders stiffened imperceptibly. "We will discuss it upstairs." As the Ashford entourage moved toward the elevators, Evangeline's gaze swept the lobby. For a moment, her eyes landed on Garrett. He expected the usual dismissal. Instead, he saw a brief evaluating assessment, as if cataloging him for future reference. Then she turned away. Later that afternoon, Garrett was cleaning brass fixtures outside the conference room when the doors burst open. Sterling stormed out, face flushed with fury. "This is not over, Evangeline." His voice was a blade wrapped in silk. "The board will not tolerate your environmental crusade much longer. The world is changing, Sterling. Either we change with it or we become obsolete." Father understood that. "Father is not here anymore." Sterling's voice dropped dangerously. "And neither is your protective majority share. Not for much longer." He strode away, leaving Evangeline in the doorway. For one unguarded moment, genuine fear flickered across her face before she composed herself. Garrett continued polishing brass, giving no indication he had heard anything. But his mind was processing the exchange. Sterling was not simply an ambitious executive. He was a threat. The lobby was crowded when it happened. Garrett was mopping near the grand fireplace when a collective gasp rippled through the hall. Evangeline Ashford was stumbling, hand pressed against her chest, face contorting with pain. She swayed once, then crumpled to the polished floor. Panic erupted. Her security team formed a useless circle. Her assistants screamed for an ambulance. Board members backed away as if her condition might be contagious. But Garrett was already moving, his mop clattering to the floor, 20 years of training surging through muscles that had never truly forgotten. She was on her back, breath coming in ragged spurts, lips showing the faint blue tinge of cyanosis.
Just like humans, right, Dad?
Yes. Everyone has their limits.
She was speaking, her voice a desperate whisper. "Mein Heart, so probere me to vermoorden. Do not trust any of them. My heart, they are trying to kill me." The words hit Garrett like ice water. He responded in Dutch. "Ms. Ashford, can you hear me? My name is Garrett. I can help you. Tell me what you feel." Her glazed eyes focused on him with disbelief. The janitor, speaking Dutch, sharp pain radiating to my arm, tingling in my jaw, classic heart attack symptoms. But something was wrong. The cyanosis progressed too rapidly. Her fingernails turned blue asymmetrically, the left hand more prominent than the right. Then he saw it, a subtle tremor in her left hand, followed by a specific arching of her back, the particular pattern of certain electrical cardiac anomalies. This was not a standard heart attack. This was Brugada syndrome, a rare genetic condition affecting the heart's electrical system. If misdiagnosed, the standard treatment could kill her. He checked her pulse, thready, dangerously erratic. Then it stopped. Her airway is constricting, Garrett shouted, his voice cutting through chaos with surgical authority. Someone get the emergency kit, now! He began chest compressions with rhythm burned into muscle memory. The revolving doors opened. Sterling Ashford strode in, face arranged in a shocked concern that did not match the calculation in his eyes. Get your filthy hands off her. He lunged forward, grabbing Garrett's shoulder. Security, get this lunatic away from her. Garrett shook him off. Stop. You will kill her. She is in cardiac arrest. 2 guards dragged him back. He fought against them. She needs a defibrillator. Every second you waste, her brain is dying. Sterling knelt beside his sister, his expression a strange mixture of panic and something colder. Something like anticipation. Sirens grew louder. Paramedics burst through the doors. Garrett shouted information as guards restrained him. Pulse was irregular before arrest. Cyanosis onset was unusually rapid. Unilateral tremor in the left hand preceding collapse. Check leads V1 and V4 for ST, segment elevation. The paramedic gave him a sharp look, startled by clinical precision from a janitor. The defibrillator charged. Evangeline's body arched. Nothing. Charged again. Another violent jolt. We have a rhythm. They loaded her onto a gurney and rushed toward the ambulance. Garrett stood between guards, chest heaving, adrenaline crashing. He had saved her. For now. But when he looked at Sterling, he saw pure, undisguised hatred. The look of a man whose carefully laid plans had been disrupted. I want him arrested, Sterling said. Now, arrested for what? Callahan Brennan, the hotel's head of security, stepped forward. At 58, Cal had the weathered face of a man who had spent decades seeing humanity at its worst during his years as a Pittsburgh detective. Arrested for saving her life? Cal continued, positioning himself between Sterling and Garrett. I have 5 camera angles showing Mr. Holden providing emergency medical assistance. Nothing more. 2 police officers arrived. Sterling attempted to control the narrative, but Cal had been dealing with men like Sterling for 30 years. The confrontation ended in standoff. Sterling left with a final venomous glare, a look that promised consequences. Be careful, Cal told Garrett quietly. Men like that do not forget. That night, Garrett sat in darkness while Rosie slept down the hall. His laptop glowed, displaying an encrypted messaging interface he had hoped never to use again. He had kept one lifeline from his former life, a connection to a man known only as Spectre, a former intelligence analyst from his Afghanistan days. Spectre owed him a life. Garrett had saved him when an IED tore through their convoy. The response came within an hour. Medical records from Metro General Hospital. Evangeline had been diagnosed with stress-induced cardiomyopathy. She was receiving metoprolol, a beta blocker. Garrett stared at the screen, hands trembling. For ordinary stress-induced cardiac events, metoprolol was standard care. But for Brugada syndrome, it was a death sentence. Beta blockers would leave her heart vulnerable to fatal arrhythmias. He scrolled further. Medical history had been provided by a Dr. Willem Decker in Amsterdam, supposedly Evangeline's longtime specialist. Sterling had personally supplied this information. The picture was damning. Sterling had provided fake medical records. The hospital was following treatment based on fabricated information.
She's taking the wrong medication. Call a cardiologist immediately.
Who are you to know about this?
Yeah. One cannot ignore this.
Every milligram of metoprolol brought her closer to death. When she died, it would look natural. No murder weapon, no obvious crime. Sterling would inherit everything. Garrett walked to Rosie's door. She slept peacefully, her dragon drawing watching over her dreams. He thought of his father's words. A peaceful life built on someone else's suffering is not peace at all. It is just denial wrapped in a comfortable blanket. He returned to his laptop. I need everything. Financial records, communications, whatever connects Sterling to this. Spectre replied, that is corporate espionage, higher price. Name it. When this is over, you work for me. Medical expertise on call. No questions asked. Done. The next morning, Garrett tracked Evangeline's assistant to the Waterford Conference Center where Ashford personnel had gathered. Tobias Crane sat alone in a small office staring at his phone with red-rimmed eyes. Garrett closed the door. Mr. Crane, I need you to listen carefully. Miss Ashford is being given medication that will kill her. He explained the medical details, watching Tobias's expression shift from skepticism to horror. Why would anyone deliberately misdiagnose her? Because her brother provided false medical records. If she dies from an apparent cardiac event, Sterling inherits everything and dismantles the environmental initiatives threatening his partnership with Arctic Petroleum. Tobias's face went pale. Ms. Ashford paid for my mother's cancer treatment when insurance refused. She is not just my employer. Then help me save her. Call the hospital. Ask for Dr. Lenora Vance. Tell her you spoke with Miss Ashford's specialist who mentioned running a procainamide challenge to rule out sodium channelopathy. Tobias made the call. At Metro General, Dr. Lenora Vance listened with growing unease. At 62, she had spent 3 decades in cardiology. The assistant's words were too technical to come from a layperson. She studied Evangeline's EKG with fresh eyes. There it was, almost imperceptible. A slight saddleback elevation that could easily be dismissed. She was reaching for the phone when her office door opened. Sterling Ashford stood there, smile pleasant but cold. Dr. Vance, checking on my sister's progress. His presence set off every warning bell she had developed over 30 years of reading people in crisis. Your sister is stable. Excellent. I have been in touch with Dr. Decker. He is pleased with your management. Dr. Vance felt ice at the base of her spine. That is interesting. I was about to call Dr. Decker myself. No need to disturb him, Sterling said quickly. Middle of the night in Amsterdam. I prefer discussing medical details directly with treating physicians. The tension shifted. Sterling's mask slipped slightly. After he departed, Dr. Vance dialed Amsterdam. Dr. Decker, this is Dr. Vance from Metro General. I am calling about your patient, Evangeline Ashford. A pause. I have no patient by that name. Her blood ran cold. She immediately called security, discontinued the metoprolol, ordered the procainamide challenge. The test began at 3 in the afternoon. For nearly 2 minutes, nothing happened. Sterling watched from the observation window. Something like satisfaction at the corners of his mouth. Then the pattern changed, a flicker on the screen. The steady rhythm transformed into the distinctive coved shape of Brugada syndrome. Dr. Vance's voice was barely a whisper. There it is, type 1 Brugada pattern. Before anyone could move, the monitor alarm shrieked. The organized waves dissolved into chaos. Ventricular fibrillation. Code blue. Get the crash cart. Charge to 200. Clear. Evangeline's body convulsed. Nothing. Charge to 300. Clear. Another violent jolt. Garrett watched through the observation window from a concealed position. Sterling watched from the opposite window, expression unreadable. Charge to 360. Clear. The highest setting. Evangeline's body arched one final time. A rhythm returned to the screen. Weak but organized. We have sinus rhythm. Dr. Vance sagged against the bed rail. She had her proof. But as Garrett turned to sleep,
You've been invisible for too long.
I think I'm ready to be seen.
slip away, his eyes met Sterling's across the corridor. Recognition flashed between them. Sterling pulled out his phone. He is here, the janitor. Find him. Do not let him leave this building. Garrett ran. Sterling's men searched methodically. But Garrett knew buildings like this. He understood the hidden arteries of service corridors and forgotten stairways. He escaped through the basement, emerging near the loading dock as an ambulance pulled in. The distraction provided cover, but his mind raced with terrifying thought. Sterling knew who he was. The Hochul employment records contained his address, his daughter's school information. He dialed Cal Brennan with trembling fingers. Cal, there are men coming for me, but that is not why I am calling. His voice cracked. Rosie, my daughter. They will use her to get to me. She is at the apartment with Mrs. Caldwell. You have to get them out. Right now. Cal's voice was steady, professional. Rosie, apartment 2B, Mrs. Caldwell. I am on my way. Be careful. These are killers. I was a cop for 15 years. I remember how to handle myself. You stay alive. I will keep your girls safe. Cal drove through storm-lashed streets with focused intensity. He parked a block from the apartment and surveyed the street. A dark SUV sat halfway down the block, engine running. Surveillance. He circled through the back alley, picked the lock on the service entrance, and moved silently up the rear stairs. He reached the apartment and knocked softly. "Mrs. Caldwell, it is Cal Brennan from the hotel. Garrett sent me." The door opened a crack. "Is Garrett all right?" "He will be, but we need to move quickly. Dangerous people are looking for him." Mrs. Caldwell returned with Rosie, still in pajamas with a coat pulled over. Cal knelt to her level. "Hi, sweetheart. Your daddy asked me to take you somewhere safe." Rosie studied him. "Mr. Brennan, Daddy said you used to be a police officer." "That is right. We are going to play a game called Silent Escape. If I squeeze your hand, freeze, and do not make a sound." Rosie nodded solemnly. "The bravest people are not the ones who are not scared," she said quietly. "They are the ones who are scared but do the right thing anyway." They made it to the stairwell before Cal heard the front entrance opening. Multiple footsteps, voices giving orders. "Apartment 2B, no witnesses, make it clean." The words sent ice through Cal's veins. He held Rosie's hand tightly, signaling freeze. They stood motionless, barely breathing. At the exit, he saw the SUV blocking the rear alley. Cal threw coins against a metal dumpster, creating noise. The driver emerged, weapon drawn, moving toward the sound. "Now," Cal whispered. They ran. Cal used the darkness as cover. He fired a single shot that shattered the SUV's front tire. More shots followed, but the combination of darkness and evasive movement kept him alive. He squeezed through the fence and found Mrs. Caldwell and Rosie in the drugstore parking lot. Rosie was trembling, but silent. "Those men were bad, were they not?" she asked. "They wanted to hurt my daddy. Your daddy helped someone who needed him. Sometimes that makes bad people angry." Rosie nodded slowly. "The scariest people are the ones who look the most normal, because they do not need to prove anything to anyone." They drove north through the storm. Cal had a cabin near Lake Charlevoix, off the grid, no address in his name. He sent Garrett an encrypted message. "Rosie's safe. Oh, heading to the fishing spot. Remember the base we caught last summer?" The cabin sat on the edge of Lake Charlevoix, a modest structure of weathered logs surrounded by dense pine forest. Cal had secured the perimeter. Rosie was finally asleep on the worn couch. The crunch of tires on gravel made Cal tense, but the approaching vehicle was the battered pickup Garrett had described. Garrett pushed inside, eyes immediately scanning until they found Rosie asleep. Relief washed over his face, profound enough to make Cal look away. "She was incredible," Cal said quietly. "Brave the whole time." "Thank you," Garrett whispered, "for everything. Do not thank me yet. We have company." Garrett's head snapped up. "A black Escalade arrived an hour ago, 2 men inside. I dealt with them. They are in the woodshed." But they were not alone. "Sterling, he is here somewhere. Waiting." Garrett's expression hardened into something Cal had not seen before. The weary janitor was gone. Something far more dangerous stood in his place. "I will handle it." The forest was alive with sound, rain hammering through pine needles, thunder rolling across the lake. Garrett circled the property, checking the bound men in the woodshed. Then he found the Escalade, empty, driver's door hanging open. Sterling was hunting him. The attack came from behind. A branch swung through the space where Garrett's head had been. Only combat instinct saved him. Sterling stood over him, expensive suit torn, face contorted with rage. All pretense of civilization stripped away. "You," the janitor who could not mind his own business. Garrett rose, maintaining distance. Sterling's stance was trained, movements controlled. Private military contractors. "It is over, Sterling. I know everything. The falsified records, the embezzlement, the deal with Arctic Petroleum. You know nothing," Sterling sneered. "You are a janitor, a nobody. The evidence speaks for itself." Sterling lunged. The branch whistled through air. Garrett sidestepped it, but the edge caught his shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm. They fought in rain and mud. Sterling was strong, well-trained, driven by fury. But Garrett had survival instincts forged where failure meant death. "Where is your daughter, janitor?" Sterling taunted. "My men found your apartment empty." Cold fury sharpened Garrett's focus. Your men are not coming. They are tied up at the moment. Sterling's confidence wavered. Brennan, the security guard, I underestimated him. People in uniforms. We look out for each other. The fight continued. Sterling worked his hand toward his jacket. A gun. Garrett saw the movement and reacted. He trapped Sterling's arm and hyperextended the elbow until something gave with a sickening crack. Sterling howled, his weapon arm useless. There is no escape, Garrett said, breathing hard. You have lost everything. I have not begun to fight. Sterling snarled. The cabin door burst open. Cal stood there, revolver aimed steadily. I would not, Sterling froze. A new voice spoke from the darkness. The game ends here, Sterling, but not because of them, because of me. Evangeline Ashford emerged from between the pine trees, supported by Tobias Crane and Dominic Hauser, her security chief. She was pale, a bulky dressing visible beneath her sweater where the implantable cardiac defibrillator had been placed. Evangeline. Sterling's voice cracked. How? I checked myself out against medical advice. It had only been 48 hours since they implanted the defibrillator, barely enough time for the incision to begin healing. But after reading what Tobias showed me, I did not have time to convalesce. She stopped feet from her brother. You tried to kill me, Sterling. My own brother. Evangeline, you do not understand. Sterling's voice turned desperate. The environmental initiative was going to ruin us. By committing murder? Evangeline's voice was ice. By falsifying medical records to trigger a fatal arrhythmia? Business is war. You have always been too soft. Do not invoke our father. He built this company by creating value, not destroying it. I have known about your betrayal for 2 years, Sterling. Watching you, gathering evidence. What I lacked was proof of criminal intent. Until this man stepped out of the shadows. Sterling's gaze shifted to Garrett. Who are you? I took an oath once to do no harm, and sometimes inaction is the greatest harm. Dominic Hauser stepped forward, securing Sterling with the handcuffs. Sterling struggled. You cannot do this. I am an Ashford. I am a family. So am I, Evangeline replied quietly. And I will not let our family name become synonymous with murder. As Hauser led Sterling away, Evangeline turned to Garrett. You risked everything. Your anonymity, your daughter's safety, your life for a woman you had never met. Why, boy? Because I made a promise when I became a doctor. First, do no harm. But the part people forget is that sometimes not acting is the greatest harm. My father was a doctor, a ship's physician before he built Ashford Maritime. He said the exact same thing. He sounds wise. He was. He also said the measure of a person is not what they do when everyone is watching. It is what they do when no one is watching at all. The cabin door opened. Rosie stood there in pajamas. Daddy, she ran to him. Garrett swept her up, holding her against his chest. I knew you would come. You always fix things. He could not speak. He could only hold his daughter and let 7 years of fear finally begin to release. Evangeline approached, kneeling to Rosie's level. Hello, you must be Rosie. Rosie reached into her pocket and pulled out a small red stone. This is for you, for strength. Daddy says red stones help people who need to be brave. Evangeline accepted it, visibly moved. Thank you, Rosie. The storm was breaking. Stars became visible through gaps in clouds. 3 months later, Garrett stood outside a building in downtown Hawthorne. What had been an abandoned hardware store was now a gleaming medical clinic. The sign read Riverside Community Clinic with Ashford Maritime Healthcare Initiative beneath. Garrett wore a white coat again. His name badge read Garrett Holden, MD. His past had been integrated, not erased. Witness protection identity consolidated with medical credentials through Evangeline's lawyers. For the first time in 7 years, Garrett could simply be himself. Cal Brennan approached with a clipboard, now clinic administrator. Equipment arrived this morning. Ready for grand opening tomorrow. I still cannot believe this is real. Believe it, though I am still getting used to calling you doctor. Garrett's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Spectre, contract fulfilled, debt paid. The Ashford legal team was very persuasive. Good luck, doctor. You earned it. Evangeline had negotiated his release from the obligation. Another debt added to the list. He deleted the message. Some chapters were meant to close quietly. Cal snorted. Life is complicated. Does not mean you run from the good parts. The front door opened. Rosie burst in. Daddy, Miss Evangeline is here. Evangeline followed, tailored suit contrasting with Rosie's colorful clothes. But her smile as she held the door revealed the woman behind the corporate facade. They had grown close over months. Not romantic yet, but something was building. A connection forged in crisis, deepening through countless conversations. The sign looks wonderful, Evangeline observed, though Holden Community Clinic would have been more appropriate. I am not comfortable having my name on the building. The invisible man stays invisible? Old habits. But I am working on it. Rosie tugged Evangeline's hand. Can I show you my office? Daddy says I can have the corner desk for homework. I would be honored. Dr. Lenora Vance arrived for her consultation visit. The cardiologist had agreed to serve part-time. Rosie immediately recruited her into the office tour. This one is for heart healing. She demonstrated, holding a pink stone. Perfect for your patients. I will keep it in my examination room. Later, Evangeline found Garrett in his new office. On his desk stood Rosie's photograph and a glass jar of colored stones. She pulled the red stone from her pocket. She had carried it every day since the cabin. A year ago, if someone told me I would be standing in a community clinic watching my cardiologist discuss healing stones with the daughter of a former janitor who saved my life, I would have questioned their sanity. Life takes unexpected turns. The question is whether you are ready for where this turn might lead. Garrett looked at her for a long moment. I spent 7 years being invisible. I think I am ready to be seen, especially by you. Rosie burst in with Dr. Vance following. Daddy, Miss Evangeline, Dr. Vance says I can help choose stones for the waiting room. But I need you both to see my selections first. She grabbed both their hands, then stopped. She looked at Evangeline with sudden seriousness. I want you to keep coming here. I want you to stay with us for a long time. Evangeline knelt to her level. Why is that, sweetheart? Because Daddy smiles more when he talks to you. He did not smile very much before you came. The words hung in the air with devastating honesty. Evangeline's eyes glistened. Over Rosie's head, her gaze met Garrett's. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition of possibility, of hope, of a future that might include all three of them. The grand opening drew the entire town. Garrett stood at the podium. 7 years ago, I learned something important about identity. Who we are is not defined by uniforms or titles. It is defined by what we choose to do when it matters most. He looked at his daughter. Someone wise once had told me that real heroes are not the ones who make speeches. They are the ones who fix things nobody else can see are broken. Rosie's voice piped up from the front row. Not all heroes wear capes, Daddy. Some just carry toolboxes. Laughter rippled through the crowd. That is exactly right, baby girl. Some just carry toolboxes, or mops, or stethoscopes. Later, Garrett found himself alone with Evangeline in his office. Sunset painted the windows gold. You gave a good speech. I meant every word. I know. That is what made it good. Evangeline produced the red stone, strength and hope, for new beginnings. She placed it on his desk beside Rosie's collection. Garrett looked at it for a long moment, then at Evangeline. Then he took her hand. From the doorway, Rosie watched with a satisfied smile. She had known Miss Evangeline was special. The stones had told her so. She slipped away quietly, leaving the adults to their moment. The invisible man had stepped into the light, and in that light he had found not danger but family and purpose and love. Some heroes wear capes, some wear scrubs, some push mops and carry toolboxes. The best ones are those brave enough to be seen when it matters most. The end.
The story of the 52-year-old janitor at the Vermilion Hotel offers a powerful lesson about courage and the true value of humanity. He was once a doctor who chose to speak the truth, even at the cost of his reputation, career, and peaceful life. When pushed to the bottom, he didn't become bitter but quietly started over, living a quiet life to protect his daughter. But even in his janitor's uniform, his nature remained unchanged. He was still someone ready to save others when danger arose. The biggest lesson is, titles don't define character. Sometimes society judges us by our profession and status, But what makes a person respectable lies in their choices when no one is watching. He could have turned his back to ensure his safety, but he chose to act because he knew that silence is sometimes complicity. And the story also reminds us that kindness isn't easy, but rather the courage to take responsibility. And ultimately, his daughter's love was the light that helped him stand firm, heal, and emerge from the darkness to live up to his values.